Is the Ethiopian province of Tigray on the brink of a dangerous new conflict? In November 2022, a brutal two-year civil war in the region came to an end following peace talks in South Africa. But while many hoped that this would mark a new start for the province, Tigray is again in crisis. This time, however, there are fears that a new conflict could spark a wider regional war. So, what exactly is happening in Tigray, and just why could it have even more dangerous implications this time round? Hello and welcome. If you're new to the channel, my name is James Ker-Lindsay, and here I take an informed look at international relations, conflict, security, and statehood. Peace agreements rarely mark the end of conflicts. While they may put a stop to fighting, it doesn't mean that everything is suddenly all right. Instead, they're merely the end of one phase and the start of another. A sustainable peace must then be built. Then there's the problem of so-called spoilers, factions and outside actors that oppose the new arrangement. All this can create a dangerous and challenging environment for peace building. In the most extreme circumstances, it can even lead to resumption of fighting. A good case in point is Tigray. For 2 years, Ethiopian and Tigrayan forces fought one of the most brutal and bloody conflicts of the 21st century. But while the sides eventually agreed to a settlement, the situation in the province is again becoming worryingly unstable as outstanding issues, internal power struggles, and outside forces all pose a risk to peace. The Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia lies in Eastern Africa. As the second most populous country on the continent, with 120 million inhabitants, Ethiopia is exceedingly diverse. The main groups are the Oromo in the centre, the Amhara in the west, and the Somalis in the east. Meanwhile, the Tigrayans, who constitute around 6% of the country's population, live in the northernmost province, bordering Sudan and Eritrea. Although I've covered Tigray extensively in other videos, it's worth providing a short summary. While Ethiopia has an exceptionally long and fascinating history and was one of just 4 African founding members of the United Nations, its emperor was overthrown in 1974 when the country fell under a Marxist military regime. In the years that followed, many of the country's ethnic groups united to oppose the government. This was led by 2 main forces, the Eritrean People's Liberation Front, the EPLF, and the Tigrayan People's Liberation Front, the TPLF. In May 1991, the rebels successfully toppled the military junta. As a result, Eritrea gained independence under Isaias Afwerki, the commander of the EPLF, who became the country's first and to date only president. Meanwhile, in Ethiopia, which had now established a federal political system, the TPLF emerged as the most significant political force under Prime Minister Meles Zenawi. Despite their previously close alliance, relations between the EPLF and the TPLF quickly deteriorated as a dispute emerged over the Ethiopian-Eritrean border, and in May 1998, this escalated into a full-scale war. But following an exceedingly brutal conflict that resulted in over 100,000 deaths, the sides agreed on a ceasefire in June 2000. As part of this agreement, they referred the issue of the disputed border to international arbitration. But while this ultimately led to a formal proposal to resolve the matter, Ethiopia's Tigrayan leadership rejected the plan. In the years that followed, relations between the two countries remained tense. However, following Zenawi's death in 2012, Tigrayan influence began to wane in Ethiopia. And in 2018, a young reformist prime minister emerged, Abiy Ahmed Ali. An ethnic Oromo, he quickly sidelined the TPLF and, in a decision that angered Tigrayans, resolved the border dispute with Eritrea, for which he received the Nobel Peace Prize. From there, tensions between the central government and the TPLF, which still controlled Tigray province, steadily worsened. This all came to a head in 2020. Against the backdrop of the COVID pandemic, a row broke out over the timing of national elections. Following a series of incidents, including an attack on a military barracks, Abiy ordered the Ethiopian armed forces to seize control of Tigray. The decision to take over Tigray sparked a vicious civil war between government troops and the TPLF-led Tigray Defence Forces. But while the Ethiopian army initially seemed stronger, the Tigrayans soon counterattacked. And it was at this point that Abiy Ahmed sought to shore up his position by calling for assistance from Eritrea. Happy to strike back at his arch-enemy, the TPLF, Afwerki now sent in Eritrean troops. Despite this, the TDF continued to make gains and within months began to push south towards the country's capital, Addis Ababa. But while Abiy Ahmed looked to be in serious trouble, Ethiopian troops eventually managed to turn the tide, combining support with Eritrea with advanced drones and assistance from Amhara militias, which pushed into Western Tigray. By mid-2022, the TDF had been forced back. In early autumn, as government forces seized the Tigrayan capital, Mekelle, the sides agreed to peace talks. Held in South Africa under the auspices of the African Union, the parties reached a deal at the beginning of November. Known as the Pretoria Agreement, it was based on 4 key points. First and foremost, Tigray would remain an integral part of Ethiopia. There would be no talk of breaking away. Secondly, full Ethiopian constitutional authority would be re-established in the province. This would include the creation of an interim administration and eventually new elections. Thirdly, there would be a single national defence force. The TDF would be disarmed and disbanded, and foreign troops would withdraw from the area, an apparent reference to Eritrean forces. Finally, humanitarian aid would be allowed into Tigray and reconstruction would begin. While the Pretoria Agreement was hailed as a crucial step towards peace, it was nevertheless viewed as a significant defeat for the TPLF. However, after 2 years of war that had left an estimated 600,000 dead and many more in dire need of assistance, the group had no choice but to accept the terms of the deal. I hope you're finding this useful. If so, please do give it a like, and if you haven't already, please do subscribe for more in-depth analysis on international relations, conflict and security. Thanks so much, and now back to the video. So, how have things developed since then? As one might expect, the picture has been mixed. Initially, the implementation seemed to be going well. As the TDF surrendered its heavy weapons, federal police returned to Mekelle and access to humanitarian aid improved. At the same time, an interim administration was established in April 2023 under Getachew Reda, a former Ethiopian Minister of Transport who'd served as the TPLF spokesman throughout the war. However, balanced against all this, significant problems also emerged. First and foremost, millions remain in desperate need of assistance, and it's estimated that over 1 million remain displaced. In part, this has been caused by ongoing tensions between Tigray and the neighbouring province of Amhara, which continues to occupy parts of Western Tigray, arguing that the TPLF had unjustly given the areas to Tigray when it was in power. To add to all this, matters have been made worse by the continuing presence of Eritrean troops in the province. Angry at having been excluded from the South Africa talks, despite helping the Ethiopian government take on the TPLF, Afwerki has refused to withdraw his forces from parts of Tigray, where they stand accused of carrying out serious human rights abuses. Meanwhile, seen as an unacceptable infringement of Ethiopian sovereignty, this has led to a dramatic deterioration in relations between Eritrea and Ethiopia. This was notably highlighted when Abiy Ahmed threatened to invade Eritrea to gain access to the Red Sea, which it lost when Eritrea gained independence in 1993. Meanwhile, in February 2025, Eritrea mobilised its armed forces, prompting fears of an invasion, which in turn led to a dramatic escalation of tensions as Ethiopia responded by sending more troops to the border areas. While all these factors have come together to create a complex web of tensions, not just between Tigray and the federal government, but also between Tigray and Amhara and between Ethiopia and Eritrea, they've also led to divisions within Tigray. In late 2024, a serious political rift erupted within the TPLF. While part remained loyal to the interim provincial leader, Getachew Reda, many others continued to support the TPLF leader and former Tigrayan president Debretsion Gebremichael. Following months of tension, in March 2025, this escalated into violence as Debretsion supporters seized several key towns in Tigray. Fearing that this could all lead to the rise of a hardline faction in Tigray opposed to the peace agreement, Abiy Ahmed now removed Getachew from his post. Instead, he appointed General Tadesse Wereda, the former commander of the rebel Tigray Defence Forces and a loyalist to the Pretoria Agreement, as the new leader of the Tigray interim administration. But since then, the situation has become increasingly fragile. With the two factions unable to resolve their differences, the TPLF has been unable to convene a General Assembly as required under Ethiopian law. Consequently, in May 2025, the National Election Board of Ethiopia revoked the TPLF's licence, thereby banning it as a political party. While the Ethiopian government argues that this is a legitimate decision, many Tigrayans see it as another step in Abiy Ahmed's efforts to eliminate the TPLF once and for all. And in this context, the TPLF now argues that the decision is a serious threat to the Pretoria Agreement. And it's for all these reasons that there are growing fears that a new conflict could well emerge in Tigray and that it could have far wider ramifications. While the Pretoria Agreement halted a bitter and brutal civil war, the deal remains exceptionally fragile. The ongoing dispute over Western Tigray, the persistent presence of Eritrean troops in the province, and the profound divisions within Tigrayan society all converge to create an extremely volatile and dangerous situation. But while there's concern that Tigray may be slipping back into another conflict, there's also the very real risk that it may also ignite another broader regional conflict between Ethiopia and Eritrea. I hope you found that useful. If so, here are some more videos on Africa and current global politics that you might find interesting. Thanks so much for watching, and see you in the next video.